Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. We are excited to talk about this one as we head into next week with the season 2 premiere of The Bad Batch. And so today we will be recapping and covering the first season of The Bad Batch, of which both Joey and myself recently rewatched the entire thing. So we're excited to kind of dive deep into that, break down some of the smaller things that perhaps we might have missed in our first watch through, and sort of delve more into the Bad Batch as a whole. But first of all, Joey, what is going on? How are you? What's new with you?
Doing well. I mean, we just got out of Christmas this past weekend, and Merry Christmas and to all that celebrates. Hope you all had a good one. I had a great time with my family. Seeing my brothers and my mom and all their kids and stuff like that. So it was definitely a feel good weekend for us, and getting all the warm fuzzies throughout the weekend. So it was definitely a good one. So,
Nice.
but yeah, excited once again to come back here talk to you about some Star Wars.
How many nieces and nephews do you have total?
So I have in my family, I have two nephews and two nieces.
Okay,
And the nephews are the ones that are in the Star Wars. So the one
that
nephew
was my next
actually,
question.
yeah, my one nephew, he was talking. He was actually talking to me about the podcast, and he's like, "Ah, it's
No
so cool that
way.
you're doing that. Yeah, I've been watching your episodes and all that." I'm like, "Yeah, we're talking about Bad Batch this week," and he's like, "Oh, that's awesome. I just started watching that too." So I'm like, "Yeah." So it's cool to have that connection with just family members in general, but the younger generation talking about this too.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's interesting with Bad Batch especially. I feel like it appeals, and Clone Wars was the same way. But
Hmm.
on the surface, if you don't know anything about it, even if you are a Star Wars fan and you don't know anything about it, on the surface it kind of is like, oh, it's a kids show, but there's a lot of like cool themes and callbacks to other parts of Star Wars. It's really a show, not it's not a children's show. I mean, it kind of is, but also ultimately
Right.
it's like an everybody show. At least I think it is.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the best part of Star Wars in general. I've always said it's for whoever wants to watch it. You'll find Star Wars is for everyone. So generationally and otherwise. So yeah, it was definitely a cool way to have the weekend with them talking about our own podcast.
Definitely. All right, and another question I had for you before we dive deep into this: New Year's resolution, not necessarily related to Star Wars, just anything you got.
Oh, well, funny you ask. I mean, there's the fitness side of things. I do want to get back out there and get back to running. That's like one of my huge things. So I'm gonna start easy. I want to get into like a 5K maybe by spring,
Nice.
and then if I can get into a half marathon by the end of the year, that's really my big goal for the New Year's. What about you?
I perhaps foolishly in my head, mine is also related to running. Um, I'm gonna shoot for 1,000 miles in a year. We'll see if that happens.
Oh, nice.
Maybe we should have like a 30 second portion of the podcast every single time in 2023. It's like, oh,
How's it going?
Joey and Ben's running update.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have little tickers of like where we're at
Yeah,
with mileage and
yeah,
stuff
mile
like that. Yeah.
markers or something. Yeah,
Nice, nice.
yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe we can here and again keep people updated on our New Year's
yeah.
resolutions. Uh,
Updated.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So to hop into the Bad Batch, um, maybe before we do sort of just a really brief chronological overview of all 16 of this first season's episodes, um, maybe just or perhaps we can do this after. It's up to you. But what are your thoughts just on the show as a whole? Maybe before we actually dive into this deeper.
So having all what there were 16 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having all 16 episodes available for me right now, I think ultimately was better, more an enjoyable watch for me than it was week by week when I initially watched it.
I agree.
I because I remember when I was watching it, there felt like there were dull moments, so there were just like this episode didn't really do it for me, or but when I watched it this time, I would power through 3, 4, 5 episodes here or there.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was because I knew that the next episode was literally 22, 25 minutes away, um, or if it was that I know that I'm going to be able to finish everything in the next few days.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this was a much more enjoyable watch for me when I was watching it, binge style, Netflix style here, and like I said, I really remember moments when I was watching it originally to just like, oh, whatever, that was an episode. I'll wait for next week, and it was almost like an obligation. And I'm like, well, I'm watching Bad Batch, I have to watch this week's episode, and I wasn't too excited about it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it this time around.
Yeah, I totally agree. And something I noted was that um when you're watching an episode week to week, it's different from the Mandalorian where like the content is longer, right? Like that specific weekly episode is like more than twice as long typically than these Bad Batch episodes. And so when you get an episode where it doesn't feel like something, you know, super significant is happening, it, and when the first time I watched it through, it felt very filler. A couple episodes
Right.
here and there. Although I want to make another comment and circle back to that maybe later, but on the filler thing. But what I noticed my second watch through, and maybe it's because I watched it all in 2 days this time, but it didn't really feel that way because, like you said, it was just like, oh, it wasn't my favorite episode, but there's another one I can just watch right after this.
Right. Yeah.
So I've noticed that when you have the capability or the ability to binge things when it comes to like TV shows and there doesn't really seem to be the same filler episode feel a lot of the times just because you
Hmm.
have access to the next episode. So I did like that aspect of it, like you said, that it was just kind of like, well, I can just keep watching if there was an episode I didn't love as much as the previous episode.
Right, and I wonder, going back to any of the other series that we watch, something even as recently as Andor, where I know you and I had some episodes that were a little bit slow. I'm thinking about the first couple episodes, and even that, through the second trio of episodes as well. Um, or maybe Obi-Wan, maybe even some of the Mandalorian, where episodes just felt like filler. Like, oh well, this is like the one I could think about for the Mandalorian is the one where they had to go to um they went to like an imperial prison or something
Mm,
to pick up somebody from there, and I'm like, what does this have to do with anything that's happening? But it
yes.
was it was basically a side quest mission. If we're familiar with the video gaming world,
Yes.
that's just all it is.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I had the same exact thought when I was watching it, the Bad Batch season one on my second watch through. Was that especially when they get to like I think it's episode 4 maybe when they meet Sid around there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sid is like this. It's almost like a my my parallel was the video game parallel where it's like after you get like 10% of the way into the game, you come to the place where it's like the HQ, or like every time you go out on a
Right.
mission, like that's the place you return to like turn
Right.
in your quest or like get the next mission.
Right.
That's what Sid's headquarters feels like to me. So
Absolutely.
the whole like probably middle 2/3 of the show, or like middle, I guess middle third is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It feels like a video game, like quests game. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we did this for Sid. Let's go turn it in. Oh, what do we get from Sid this time? Let's go turn it
Right,
in.
yeah. And they would even open up episodes kind of right in the middle of one of these
Yeah,
quests
yeah,
when you
yeah,
have no idea of what is they need to be doing
right.
during it, but like, somebody like, Tech will be like, "Oh, well, that's not what this mission's about," or whatever. So,
Yeah,
so I think they very much, brought that out of like the video game side of things, and just I think those are those episodes we're talking about that very much felt like filler
hmm
quest episodes that, did you need them to move the story along? I don't really think so. Maybe you get away with one or two of them, but like you said, there's a pretty significant amount of them, I think, in this season.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. Um, so maybe at this point, if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, and have either not seen any of the Bad Batch or you've seen season 1 of the Bad Batch and you just kind of need a bit of a refresher, this is our attempt as best as we can to summarize season 1 in 5 minutes or less. All right, here we go. And if either of us leave anything out, we can just jump back in and with one another and kind of add to what we may have missed. But essentially, there is this group of clones known as Clone Force 99, composed of Hunter, Tech, Echo, Wrecker, and Crosshair. And if you're watching on YouTube, they're at the center of your screen right now. If you need a little bit of a facial refresher there, if you will. And so this Clone Force 99 is basically, you're thrown into the first episode, and it's like as Order 66 is happening, which is really cool, I might add. And maybe a good way to kind of do this chronologically is to sort of make stops with the people we meet along the way. And so in episode 1, we get a chance to meet Caleb Dune, otherwise known as Kanan Jarrus, for those of you that have seen Star Wars Rebels. And we see how his master, Deepa Balaba, pronunciation check, is that?
Yes, correct.
Cool. Deepa Balaba is killed in action by her own clones. And so you see this kind of just one aspect of Order 66 that we've never got to see before. And so there's this sort of division, not really a division, it's really more of like a mano-y-mano thing between Hunter and Crosshair, who are kind of like, I mean, Hunter is the alpha, but Crosshair kind of has this big personality, kind of a, what's the word? Kind of just silly character, like he's always grumpy,
Right.
And his tagline is "Good soldiers follow orders," and so he and Hunter kind of have like a disagreement regarding like how they should go about things. They return eventually to Camino, and which is, by the way, it was cool to see Camino in this show from a different perspective as well. And they're thrown in jail. I guess I should say they're thrown in jail after Admiral Tarkin, who's not Grand Moff Tarkin yet, sends them on a mission to go after Saw Gerrera's. There's all kinds of people they throw in this show, which is really cool. They go after Saw Gerrera's rebels. And so when they get there, they realize that there's a lot of like civilians, and that Hunter makes the decision, okay, we're not going to like kill innocent people. And so Crosshair disagrees with this. They return. But it was all, caught by a probe droid, and so they're thrown in jail. Crosshair is released and basically goes through some sort of procedure, which this is a part of the show that we can revisit too, because it's a little bit unclear to me what actually happened during that procedure, but we can revisit that later. And so ultimately, Crosshair begins working for the Empire. Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, Tech, and Omega, this other unaltered clone. So in addition to her, the only other completely unaltered clone is Boba Fett. And so she is very unique in this manner, and also makes her very sought after, especially by the Kaminoans. And particularly the lead research scientist, Nala Se, I believe is her name. Nala Se is the scientist, and Lama Su is the prime minister. Lots of like similar names, but slightly different.
Similar,
yeah. And so basically, that's like the beginning of the show, and then pretty quickly into the show, the Bad Batch has kind of made the decision they're not going to be part of the Empire after they've escaped, and so they're kind of trying to find their way. They meet Sid, who we talked about earlier, who's this like lizard-like lady who they go on missions for, and they like have a headquarters at her almost cantina-like place.
Right, and in exchange for food, for shelter, for her to not tell on them.
Right, exactly. And so they learn that, I think from after their first mission, that the bounty hunter who is pursuing them is Fennec Shand, who is another person who's also was in Boba Fett, and so it's like
in Mandalorian.
And so you're constantly getting hit with like these people who are from like completely different shows, and there's lots more. The list doesn't stop there too. And so what's up next on my list? So then it's either the next episode or maybe the episode after, we meet the Martez sisters, who are in the last season of Clone Wars, and
Clone
they have
Wars.
lots of scenes with Ahsoka. And I hope we get to see more of them in season. I bet
Yeah.
you anything we see more of them in Bad Batch season 2.
Mm-hmm.
But they develop a bit of a camaraderie by the end of the episode and understanding with the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch actually shares the information with them that they've retrieved from the mission. And then, perhaps most importantly, they learn that the Martez sisters are working for someone else, who we find out the next
Oh,
episode is
yeah.
Captain Rex. And it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's Rex. Rex is here, you know?
Rex, yeah.
Um,
Had to have Rex.
yeah, and so that's the episode that's really important because up until that point, which I failed to mention, Wrecker has been having these really bad headaches. And so they make a point of showing it every episode too. And Wrecker's
Right.
kind of like
Oh.
the big goofy like dumb one, and he's like, "Oh, I'm fine. My head just hurts," you know.
Right.
And so ultimately, there's a part where he kind of loses control, and the chip takes over, and so they have the Bad Batch all have their chips removed during that episode, so they no longer have the inhibitor chips placed. The next episode, we find out another cameo appearances from Cad Bane, another bounty hunter who is, we find out later on, is hired by Lama Su, the prime minister, to retrieve Omega, and that Fennec Shand, the other bounty hunter, is hired by the Kaminoan doctor Nala Se. So these two bounty hunters hired by different Kaminoans to retrieve the same prize is basically what's happening.
Right.
Oh, and I also forgot to mention there's a Bib Fortuna cameo in an episode or two back when they retrieve a baby Rancor. It's kind of implied that baby Rancor is the same Rancor from Return of the Jedi.
And can I just say that now I feel real bad about what happened with
Yeah,
that Rancor in Return
me
of the
too.
Jedi? I felt they somehow are able to make us feel for these characters, these creatures, where before we were like, that's the Rancor, or the Tusken Raiders, like they're able to make us like get the feels for these characters, these species, and now I feel bad about what happened to the Rancor in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I think that is the great thing that animation allows you the opportunity to do, because you could explore those storylines, but making it in an animated format makes it a lot easier to. To make a Rancor lovable is a lot easier in animation than it is in live action, I would say. What was his name again? The Mushi or
something like that.
Oh man, I can't remember. The baby Rancor. Anyways, and so then probably my favorite part of the entire season is we get to the Ryloth storyline, where Hera, it's actually curious. We get Hera and Kanan both in this show, completely.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, completely unrelated though. And on separate ends of the season. Kanan's only in the first episode, and Hera's only in the last 4 or 5 episodes or something like that. And so Hera is on Ryloth. She's a Twi'lek, and so Ryloth has been taken over by the Empire, and there's kind of a corrupt senator who's wanting to work with the Empire, and Hera's father is kind of on the fence about what they should do in terms of their next steps, and her uncle is much more of a I guess extremist is a good way of putting it, and so he wants to kind of take it to the Empire, while her father is kind of like, hold on now, we need to like play this slow, but things escalate, and ultimately her father kind of is forced to be like, okay, look what they're doing, like we have to act. And so the Bad Batch ultimately has to like come to the rescue and help protect Ryloth, and so that's kind of that was not 5 minutes. I think it was more like 9 or 10, but
yeah, that's fine.
That was as succinct as an overview as I could hope to get. But we can dive back into certain parts, anything that I missed, and anything you want to talk about. But that was a brief overview.
Yeah, and towards the end, I mean, throughout the entire season, there were parts of the Empire that wanted to just get rid of the clones altogether.
Yeah.
So that's a big storyline that kind of goes throughout the season. While obviously the Bad Batch are kind of away from the Empire, we still have Crosshair, who is with the Empire and kind of pretty much holding his own as the singular clone that is sticking around. He went as far as to even kill one of the actual stormtroopers that
Yeah.
that were kind of stepping out of line in his eyes.
The one
So
who was giving him a hard time too.
exactly, yeah. So that's kind of where we saw Crosshair. So we're in parallel with the Bad Batch, and we're following along their journeys, their side quests, and their ultimate understanding of not only kind of living not a complete soldier life, because they have to kind of watch over Omega, and
Mhm.
then that's one of the big things that you kind of see Hunter and Wrecker kind of they really take her under their wings,
Yeah.
and they want to protect her, but at the same time she is a clone just like them, so she has the capability to kind of hold her own in her own way too. So one of my favorite characters was Omega because of that, because she we tend to forget, like, well, she is actually a clone too. She is actually one of them. Yeah, maybe she's not altered and exactly like them, but she has the same capabilities, just maybe a few years younger. And you really see the development of these characters, learning this kind of new role. I mean, they've been soldiers their entire lives, and now they have to kind of care for one of their own, a younger one. And I think clones are good in that way. I mean, they call each other brother. They always have this family type of and even when they went to go visit the one that was a kind of a stray, in one of the early episodes,
Hmm.
he ended up leaving the clone army to be with another person. And even in that case, they called them their brother, and they want to make sure that they're okay. They helped them out. And so seeing how they don't they are no longer soldiers in that way, and become more of like the civilian type of, but obviously still doing these things that they are capable of doing. Kind of was a pretty important storyline throughout.
Hmm.
And like I said, with Omega, but on the other side, you see Crosshair being the exact same thing as he was, before this season started, as a soldier. Good soldiers follow orders, and to come all of that to the finale where they all, eventually meet up again, and you see Crosshair and the rest of the Bad Batch together, and you see Crosshair trying to get them to. It's very much Star Wars. Come join me back, and we could rule this together. Um, but to kind of have that, we talked about a lot of, when we were watching Andor, those Star Wars moments. This was a Star Wars moment for him to be on the side of the Empire, and even still, even all after all the stuff that they have been through in the season, him still wanting them to be a part of, the Empire. And also, there was it was interesting because it gives you you get to see that side from him, where he said, "You guys left me, you
Yeah.
left me," and you kind of don't think that. You just originally you just think, well, Crosshair is doing his own thing, and it's probably because of Chip. But he even says that he had the chip removed, so maybe that's the procedure that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can talk more about that too. I guess real quickly to touch on what you were just talking about, maybe before we talk about the chip. I think ultimately it's a difference in between particularly Hunter and Crosshair, but really Crosshair and they're all of them, the rest of the Bad Batch. It's a difference in what does it mean to do the right thing. Just and really, up into Order 66, doing the right thing meant following orders.
Hmm.
As a soldier in the clone army, fighting for the Republic, there really wasn't times where it was like, okay, let's think about this. What is the right thing to do? And then ultimately, that is what Order 66 brought about. This brought them to this
Right.
point where Hunter is like, well, is blindly following orders which we think aren't good. Like,
Hmm.
does following orders supersede what we think is doing the right thing? And
Right.
for Crosshair, the answer to that is no. But for Hunter, the answer to that is yes. So that's kind of the crossroads at which we find those two characters. The chip thing. See, it's still not clear to me
Yeah.
when they are never explicit about when the chip is removed from Crosshair.
Right. Right.
Um, which is I think what makes the first season kind of shrouded in mystery, and I like that.
Yeah.
Because he uses the words, "I had it removed a long time ago," and
Hmm.
so that could be like, during that episode when he's having the procedure, which we thought was enhancing the chip,
Hmm.
but I mean, who's to say that wasn't like
Right.
5 years ago or so? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, remember
yeah,
the clones like age faster, so long time ago to him could
yeah,
be just yesterday.
that's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
point. Yeah, yeah,
That's good. But yeah, I mean, that's always good television. Just don't you can't give it all in the first season. Obviously, you
yeah,
gotta have to figure out a little bit. So I mean, the way, and we kind of passed along this, but what ends up happening on Camino is that the Empire, kind of takes everyone away from Camino. Um, it-
and
I don't know if they
destroys it really.
reassign. I don't know if they reassign the clones or that were there or what exactly. But yeah, but essentially they destroy, what we know as the Camino clone facility.
Yeah, I think they do. There is a line or something that says they're shipped off world,
Hmm.
which to me is kind of code for we sent them somewhere probably on the front lines, not safe. So that's
Right.
kind of just like a gradual phasing out of the clones, just putting them in the line of duty, and when they're gone, they're gone.
Right. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Maybe there's like a cool, expanded universe story out there somewhere about the post Order 66, clones coming to
Hmm.
and actually, I think this could be a storyline in season 2 that we see. I think we may get to see perspectives from other clones not a part of the Bad Batch. I think a good example of this is Clone Commander Hauser, I think is his name, where we get to see these perspectives from other clones who are post Order 66 coming to realizations about the Empire,
Hmm.
even with the chips part of their
Right.
their brain or their system still. So that could be something we do actually get to explore next
Hmm.
season too.
Yeah, and what was really powerful about I don't know if you noticed, but when they had right before the Empire destroyed the Camino clone facility, there was a lot of like still shots of the barracks, the cafeteria, where they all stayed, because these were pretty big scene, sets or places where you would see the clones all through the Clone Wars series. We saw a lot of it during the prequels. So to see it like one last time, that's how I kind of looked at it. You got to see all of these rooms, these scenes one last time before it got destroyed, and it was like almost like a little bit poetic, a little tear,
Yeah.
that you knew that this was the last time you'd see it intact. And with especially with, like I said, with all of the, I mean, it's the Clone Wars. The entire animated series was based off of, these characters, all of these clones, and this is the end. They will no longer make any others. Her name is Omega for a reason. She's the last one, So I think that, all of that, coming to a head at the end of the season, was really, kind of pretty powerful to me because where it was such a huge part of the Republic, and it was such a big part of the importance and the growth of an Ahsoka, of an Anakin. These were very big pieces of their stories, and now there's going to be no more of them. So you know maybe and I think this is what's good about Bad Batch, is that it gives you that perspective that to say, well, this is it. This is all we've got. And if they ship them off world and really, you don't, let's just assume that's the end of any of those clones. You still got this Bad Batch that's left.
Hmm.
What's going to happen to them? Obviously, we know that Rex is around. We know that there are other, Hauser. We've got Gregor. We know that some of these make it out, of this Bad Batch series. But to have like at least a couple of leftovers, and especially them being like these superpowered clones, I think it makes it for a more stronger series.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I mean, we definitely won't be getting any more clones created on Camino. Um,
Hmm.
but something I did kind of leave out of the synopsis of the whole season is that at the end of the season, two things. One, the Prime Minister Lamassu, it's unclear if he's killed or not. Kind of the door
As always,
Yeah,
we never know.
the door kind of closes on the room, and you're like, I don't know what his fate is. I mean, I would assume he's not probably, he's may not be alive, but who knows? We could see him in season 2. But the other, and I think far more important piece, is that the other main Kaminoan featured in the season, Nala Se, the scientist, is brought in by the Empire specifically for her knowledge of these cloning techniques. And so that, to me, is probably the most up in the air portion of season 2 as to, is that kind of just like a throwaway, like, this could help to explain some of like the Legends like cloning stuff down the line with Palpatine, or are they actually going to use that as a plot point in season 2 of the Bad Batch? I don't know, honestly. I could see it going either way. The reason I think it will be addressed is because Omega is very much at the center of this show. In many ways, the show is about, this kind of feud or rivalry between Hunter and Crosshair, but I think even more so it's about like who Omega is and what she is doing, not only for the Bad Batch, what they're doing for her, but kind of what they all stand for, right? And so I would be surprised if Nala Se, the doctor, the scientist, just kind of goes away and we don't readdress some of the cloning techniques and how that pertains to the rest of the series. I'm curious about that, at least.
And now that you say that, we haven't done it in a while, so I'm gonna say it right now.
Yeah,
this is where Snoke's coming in. At some point with this cloning.
Honestly, okay, what species does Snoke resemble more than any other species? Kaminoans. The Snoke origin story. We're really grasping for straws, but you never know.
So we should have like a list of theories. So far it's Kino, right?
Kino is Snoke.
And Kino is Snoke, and then the second one now is that the Kaminoans cloned him somehow. So
he does look like a Kaminoan if you think about it. Like, pretty close.
Yeah,
at least.
Little. I mean, maybe not the long neck, but I mean,
but height.
Yeah. He's pretty tall and kind of holy, all around the face and all that. So yeah, I think that it could be.
Yeah, leave it to us to sneak in a Snoke reference when we can, which is ironic because we both love the sequels, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so moving forward into next season, there's clearly lots to be excited about. We just kind of touched on the cloning thing. Interested to see where we go from here. I feel like the season 1 left off in a place where it's not super clear, where other than probably just, more confrontation between the Empire and the Bad Batch, it's not super clear where exactly the story is headed.
Right.
But I think that also gives season 2 some flexibility. They could have, chose to do pretty much whatever they wanted with it, and as long as it made some sense. And so I think that's what's exciting about season 2 coming up. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I'm also excited at the possibility and the potential of seeing Bad Batch characters appear in other Star Wars works.
Oh, I know.
Because I feel like Bad Batch is the drawing board or like the hub for like to just bring in everything. I mean, again,
they're Sid.
Yeah.
They're Sid.
I mean, we had Cad Bane, Captain Rex, Fennec Shand, Tarkin, the Martez sisters, Saw Gerrera, Kanan Jarrus, Bib Fortuna, Harrison Dula, the Pike Syndicate, like all these other like characters that are not originally from the Bad Batch. They're from Clone Wars, Rebels, the original trilogy, the prequels. Like they're bringing in people from everywhere and putting it in this show. And my question is, are they going to take Bad Batch characters and put them in like Mandalorian, probably not Mandalorian, but
Right.
the upcoming video game Jedi Fallen Order takes place not too long after this time period.
Hmm.
I want to see these characters, especially Omega, in
Yeah.
some other Star Wars content. So that's another thought of mine that I have.
Why are you putting this in my heart? Like I want it now.
Just
Like
to
I didn't really
disappoint you
think of
when they
that.
decide not to do it.
You know what we should do is come up with who do we want cast in some of these roles.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
That'd be a fun one to do.
I am a huge Florence Pugh fan, and so she's a little old for Omega at this age, but
Yeah,
maybe an older
right.
Omega.
Yeah, just get Florence in Star Wars somehow, please.
Yeah. I don't know why that was the first person that came to mind. I just watched Don't
Yeah.
Worry, Darling a couple days ago. Maybe
Oh,
that's why.
nice.
But yeah, anything that we skipped over, anything that we missed, any thoughts on just the whole first season as a whole, or if not, what you're most excited about with season 2?
I mean, with season 2, like you said, I think the way they were able to integrate and bring in different characters, I'm excited now of who we're gonna see in season 2. Whether it's do we see Kanan again? Do we see, like kind of like crossing paths at some point? Do we see an older Hera? I don't know if there's a time jump between, end of season 1 and to season 2. I don't know where we are in
I don't
time.
think we really. I don't know if they've announced that or not.
Yeah.
I would assume there won't be a huge one.
Right. Yeah.
But who knows?
But I mean, we're like the whole crosshair thing. Like, how do they resolve that?
Mhm.
So I mean, there's a lot of a lot up in the air. And I will say, before watching the second watch through that we just did over the past the past week or so, I was not as excited for season 2 until I watched all of season 1. I'm like, oh wow,
Totally
I'm
agree.
really into this now.
Yep.
I'm really into this now. So, because I forget how much like, and here's a question for you. So, if you had to, if you were one of the Bad Batch,
I love this
who
question.
would you be, or who do you think you would be?
Man, this is such a cop out answer, but I honestly like see different parts of myself with almost all of them.
Sure, yeah.
Man, that is really tough. I will say Echo probably the least. I feel like
Hmm.
Echo gets the least love, and I feel bad, but I think maybe he'll play a larger role in the second season, hopefully. Um, oh, that's really tough. I think in a lot of ways, Wrecker, in a
Hmm.
lot of ways, Hunter, and in
Yeah,
some ways, Tech.
yeah.
But this is a hot a hot what am I trying to say? A an unpopular opinion, an unpopular answer. I would say Crosshair maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I am the dark side one, but
And everything that we've ever said, like we when we try to put like logos together, you're always on the dark side for some reason. So I think this may be a true statement.
the reason I also think that I can back that up a little bit is that I felt the most I felt bad the most of anyone in the season for Crosshair.
Mm-hmm.
I empathized with him the most.
Right.
Not that I wasn't like obviously on the side of the Bad Batch as I was the other four of them as I was watching, but in many ways I was like, man, I feel like Crosshair is a little misunderstood.
Gotcha.
So maybe for the sake of being,
Normally,
uh,
you like the gray area. He is very not gray.
I feel like Crosshair is pretty gray. I mean, he
Yeah, you
ultimately
think
is
so?
like the reason that he
I
helps
think
them
at the
out.
end, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that is
mean,
true.
I would say he's the most gray of any of them.
Yeah,
all
right.
all the other ones lean, far more towards. I mean, they're not Force users, obviously, but far more
Right, yeah.
towards the light than dark. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I'd probably go with Crosshair. What would you say?
So I I would put myself, and you know how you said you're like a lot of the features or values of like all of them kind of combine into, combine into you.
Yeah,
I think I'm solely on one person.
can I guess?
I'll give I'll give you a guess. Yeah, I'll give you a guess.
I don't want to guess
No, no,
incorrectly, and you're like, that's not me.
let's
um,
see.
I I'm the reason I'm gonna say Wrecker is because this like caring sense of like lovability for Omega.
Okay, that's your final answer.
You're making me second guess myself, but yes,
I'm just,
I'm gonna stick with Wrecker.
okay, this is where in the video you have to hit the ding ding ding, like, so that's right. That was
Oh,
exactly
let's
who I
go.
was thinking. So yeah, no, that was exactly, and for one of the reasons why. Yeah, so I mean, the the kind of the I think about how I am in like video games, you
Mhm.
know, in like Fortnite or whatever. I just go, you know, I just go. Let's
Yeah.
go. Not much thought. Maybe there's a little bit of planning, but if you lead me, if you were to lead me in a certain way, I will listen and I'll go that way. So Hunter being that, you know,
Mm.
kind of that direction leader type thing. But Hunter, I will go and I will go hard. And I'll go all in, you know, and you know, especially with the you know, the love that he has for, you know, the what you end up seeing, like how much he cares for Omega. I think about how you know, how me and my daughter are, you know, like, you know, that type of thing. And they share, and with Wrecker and Omega, they always talk about that Mantrell mix or whatever that was. Looks
Yeah.
like, essentially looks like popcorn. I'm like, that looks so good. And I like popcorn. And so just all of that, all of the way that he leads and kind of does his thing. He's 100% all the time, and I like to do that too.
You made me sweat that one out. I thought I got it wrong.
No, you're good. That's the whole point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, lots and lots to be excited about. Season 2 premieres, I believe it's a week. Is it a week from tonight? What day is January 4th? What day of the week?
Yeah, that should be a Wednesday, right?
Yes, I believe that's correct. It'd
Yeah.
be Wednesday, January 4th at 2 in the morning our time, which that's 3 a.m. Eastern, midnight Pacific time. We plan to hopefully have a reaction video up. Reaction. Pretty much ASAP. At the very latest Wednesday early morning. Hopefully by the time you wake up. So be on the lookout for that. And then we'll have our typical podcast episode next Thursday morning available as well. Also recapping not one but two episodes of The Bad Batch, by the way. We're getting not one but two to start the season off, which I like. I think. Do you think they'll start the season off with? I think it's like a hour-long episode, like they did with season one, or do you think we'll
Probably,
get
yeah.
shorter ones since there's two of them?
No, I mean, I think in total we'll probably get the hour, because if I'm not mistaken, the first episode of season one was like hour 15, right? So
Yeah, it's like
I think
70
that was
minutes.
pretty
I
much,
want to
yeah.
say.
Yeah, so I would assume something similar to that.
Yeah, I hope so. The more, the better. Honestly.
And I didn't realize that they have, there's like somewhere in the middle that they're also going to release two episodes, like kind of a mid-season
Oh, I like that.
like two-parter as well. So
Maybe
that's kind of cool.
maybe 7 and 8 if I had to
Yeah,
guess,
something like
or
that. Yeah.
maybe it would be 9 and 10 to start off the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? We'll have to double check on that, and of course we'll be discussing it next week on the season two first two episodes recap.
Looks like it's 7 and 8
Well, it is
actually.
7 and 8. Okay, so to end
Mm-hmm.
the first half of the season. So yeah, lots to be excited about with Bad Batch season two. With it's so different being excited about a show like this compared to a show like Kenobi or even like Mando or Ahsoka, because I feel like it's so much harder to screw this up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like it comes on and you're just like, I'm enjoying this and I'm so happy.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas with Kenobi, you're like, please don't mess it up. Please don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Please, you know what I mean?
And there's so much more pressure, and I don't, you know, it has to, I believe it's a lot to do had to do with live action versus animated,
yeah,
you
it
know.
definitely is.
You with animated, and we learned this watching the original Clone Wars, you can get away with a lot more.
Yeah.
You could do a lot more with, with an animated series. So that budget is much, is easier to hit. But if you have, actors that are on set, that are, in the volume that they have, you have possibilities of messing up. And even to go even further back with movies, we've
Mhm.
talked about how much the pressure is to make the money back on these movies. And you wait 2-3 years for them, only for them to like maybe not make as much, or maybe not come through as much as you want. So I think that these animated series. I'm telling you, if people are not watching these animated series, you are missing a ton of great Star
Big
Wars
time.
content.
Big time missing out. Well, we will be here to cover it all. Thanks, as always, for listening. You can hit us up over on Twitter at Hoth Hangout or email us, hothhangout@gmail.com. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, we could do another mailbag segment sometime soon. So maybe we could do one over Bad Batch, hopefully, at some point during the first half of the season. So shoot us a message via email or tweet at us, and hopefully we can feature that here as a part of the podcast. And yeah, we'll see you next week for the recap, the reaction of Bad Batch Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2. And I think that's all we have left to say. Joey, any last thoughts?
As my friend Ben would probably say, good soldiers follow orders.
Good soldiers follow orders. May the Force be with you. Thanks for listening.